Hello, everybody out there in front of your screens. Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends and colleagues, I'm Joerg Jesse from Germany, from across the pond. Thank you very much for the invitation, and I'm glad to be part of this important conference. And I'm glad not to be in a late afternoon session, because it would be midnight over here in Germany. Thank you for that. Ladies and gentlemen, before I start with the solitary session, I have to build a bigger picture. I would like to say something about the German system. And what you see is a normal German prison. I will be with that later on. Germany is a federal state with a population of 83 million. We have 179 prisons in Germany, about 60,000 prisoners. That means we have an incarceration rate of 72. And Germany, as I said, is a federal state with 16 states. You see a map which is pretty colorful. My state is the one over here and on the northeast, called Mecklenburg-Western Pomerania. I come back to the prison. This is, as I said, a normal prison in Germany. About 400, with about 400 prisoners. What you see is the gate over here, the administration, and the visiting area. The buildings with the bright roofs are workshops and the kitchen, and you see 3 wings for the prisoners. Apart from that, you see this building here in the left corner. It's a social therapy unit for special treatment programs for sexual and violent offenders. And you see another building outside the wall on the left down here. That's the open department of the prison with 100 further space for 100 more prisoners outside the prison. So it's pretty standard. We have older ones, we have younger ones than this one, but German prisons are not as big as the ones in the US. We have just, I think, 2 or 3 prisons with more than 1,000 prisoners. All the others are in a range about 200 to 700. So let's have a look inside now. This is a normal wing. I think it's exact from this prison you have seen. What do you see? You see it's pretty bright. The doors are different to the barrack doors in the American prisons. German prisoners have complete privacy in their cells. With private items in them. You see cells with pictures on the wall. They are about 10 to 13 square meters big. They always have a connected room with a basin and a toilet. In modern prisons with a shower. And on the front, on the right side, you see a telephone, the telephone for this wing. The prisoners can receive phone calls from their family, but in the modern ones we have meanwhile telephones or the possibility to have phone calls right in their cells with certain telephone numbers, of course. So let's have a look in a solitary cell. That's a solitary cell in Germany. It's exactly the same size as a normal cell. The difference is that you have fixed furniture. As in all the other cells, you have daylight and big windows. You have reduced personal items. It depends on how long you have to stay in the cell. And you have, as I already said, a basin and a toilet in a connected room with this cell. So it's 10 to 12 or 10 to 13 square meters. Everybody who is in solitary in Germany uses a cell like this. They are not all exactly the same, but they are pretty much the same. So if I talk about solitary, I have to talk about a lot of regulations, conventions, and rules. And these rules and laws, they are our fundament for our work. And if you look at that's what we will do, a bit more detailed to these rules, you will see that they are pretty much the same all over the world. There is a UN Declaration on Human Rights. There are the Mandela Rules from the UN. There is the European Convention on Human Rights, responsible the Council of Europe, the organization of 47 states in Europe. It's not the EU, and it's a completely independent organization. Then we have the CPT. I will get to that later. He works on the base of the European Convention for the prevention of torture and inhuman or degrading treatment or punishment. Then we have the European Prison Rules, written in a group from the Council of Europe. We will get then to the German Basic Law, and last but not least, the Prison Act of German Federal States, with the example of my state, Mecklenburg-Western Pomerania. Before we get more detailed into these, into the content of the rules and regulations, let's have a look at the European system. You see this triangle with the European Convention on Human Rights in the center, and you see three different organizations. The first one is the European Court of Human Rights. All the decisions of this European Court of Human Rights are based on the European Convention on Human Rights, on law, rules, and regulations. And these rules and regulations, based on the European Convention on Human Rights, come from the PCCP. It's the Council of Penological Cooperation, a council of the Council of Europe. This is a group of experts of 9. They write rules, regulations, recommendations, handbooks, guidelines, all regarding prisons and probation systems. And the third player in this triangle is the CPT. It's the Council for Prevention of Torture. It's a monitoring group of 47, one member of each state of the Council of Europe. They monitor, they visit prisons, and they write reports based on the conventions, the court decisions, and the rules and regulations written by the PCCP. So I was a member of the PCCP for quite a while. Each session, each meeting of the PCCP, in each meeting of the PCCP, you will have one member of the European Court of Human Rights and one of from the CPT. They work closely together, and the group, the monitoring group from the PCCP, their visits are spontaneous. The country they go to just knows they will come, and then they suddenly are in front of your door, and they look very detailed in the prisons and the security systems, and especially if there is anything regarding to human rights or anything which is a problem, and then they write reports, and the reports the government of the state which was visited has to answer on these reports, and they are all in the internet. So all, in short words, it's a standard setting system with the elements regulations, rules, laws, court decisions, and monitoring. But now let's have a look at the Universal Declaration on Human Rights. Are there any informations regarding prison issues in them? Yes, they are. Let's have a look at some examples. Article 1. All human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. They are endowed with reason and conscience and should act towards one another in a spirit of brotherhood. Article 2. Everyone is entitled to all the rights and freedoms set forth in this declaration without distinction of any kind, such as race, color, sex, language, religion, political or other opinion, national or social origin, property, birth or other status. Furthermore, no distinction shall be made on the basis of the political, jurisdictional or international status of the country or territory to which a person belongs, whether it be independent, trust, non-self-governing, or under any other limitation of sovereignty. Article 3. Everyone has the right to life, liberty and security of person. And Article 4. No one shall be held in slavery or servitude. Slavery and the slave trade shall be prohibited in all their forms. And last but not least, Article 5. No one shall be subjected to torture or to cruel, inhuman or degrading treatment or punishment. And if we have a look at the Convention on Human Rights of the Council of Europe, you will find similar things. Article 1, obligation to respect human rights, prohibition of torture, and no punishment without law, just as examples. So let's have a look now at the Mandela rules, the worldwide prison rules of the United Nations. What we find there: all prisoners shall be treated with the respect due to their inherent dignity and value as human beings, as Rule 1. In Rule 14, in all places where prisoners are required to live or work, the windows shall be large enough to enable the prisoners to read or work by natural light, and shall so constructed that they can allow the entrance of fresh air, whether or not there is artificial ventilation. Rule 39.3. Prison administration shall not sanction any conduct of a prisoner that is considered to be the direct result of his or her mental illness or intellectual disability. Rule 43A. In no circumstances may restrictions or disciplinary sanctions amount to torture or other cruel, inhuman or degrading treatment or punishment. The following practices in particular shall be prohibited: solitary confinement, indefinite, and solitary confinement prolonged. And last but not least, Rule 45.1, solitary confinement shall be used only in exceptional cases as a last resort for as short a time as possible and subject to independent review and only pursuant to the authorization by a competent authority. And if we look at the European prison rules, we found the same rules even more detailed than in the Mandela rules. The basic principles, for example, all persons deprived of their liberty shall be treated with respect for their human rights. Number 3, restrictions placed on persons deprived of their liberty shall be the minimum necessary and proportionate to the legitimate objective for which they are imposed. Number 5, life in prison shall approximate as closely as possible the positive aspects of life in the community. Number 6, all detention shall be managed so as to facilitate the reintegration into free society of persons who have been deprived of their liberty. In good order, we find under 53.1, special security and safety measures go beyond those referred to in Rules 51 and 52 and are measures imposed on prisoners who pose a particular threat to security or safety. 53.4. The nature of any such measures, their duration and the grounds on which they may be applied, as well as the procedures to be followed in imposing and implementing them, shall be determined by national law. And under discipline and punishment, disciplinary procedures shall be mechanisms of last resort. And under instruments of restraint shall be used only for the period required and shall be removed as soon as the risk posed by unrestricted movement are no longer present. So we get more and more closer to our prisons and to our offices. What you see is Germany's, as I call them, rule number 1. Human dignity shall be inviolable. To respect and protect it shall be the duty of all state authority. The second sentence is the important one, especially for prison officer, police, and so on. And they swear their oath on this article and the whole basic law, which means our Constitution. So let's go to the Prison Act, Mecklenburg-Western Pomerania. It's pretty the same as in all the other states. What are our aims and principles? The aim of executing and serving sentences to imprisonment shall be to enable the prisoners to lead a socially responsible life without criminal offending. The objective of imprisonment shall be to protect the general public from the commission of further criminal offences. Our principles: the regime in which sentences to imprisonment are executed and served shall be designed in a fashion that confronts the prisoner with their criminal offences and the consequences of their offending. The right from the beginning, imprisonment shall work towards the integration of the prisoners into life and freedom. Life during imprisonment shall be approximated as far as possible to general living conditions. Detrimental effects of imprisonment shall be counteracted. The prisoner's relationship to social life shall be preserved and promoted. Persons and bodies outside of the institution shall be involved in everyday life in the institution. The prisoner shall be enabled to participate in life and freedom as soon as possible, and the different needs of prisoners, especially such related to gender, age, and origin, shall be considered in the shaping and organization of the regime of imprisonment, both generally and individually. So what's in our law about solitary confinement? First of all, solitary confinement is a matter of special precaution. What's special precaution? That's what the law says. Special precautions may be ordered in respect of prisoners where, in view of their behavior or on account of their mental state, there is increased danger of them escaping, or danger of violent attacks against persons or property, or the danger of suicide or self-injury. The following, under 2, the following measures shall be permissible as special precautions, and there's number 3, segregation from all other prisoners, solitary confinement. Under 3, measures like segregation shall likewise be permissible where the danger of a prisoner being freed or a considerable disturbance of order in the institution cannot be avoided or remedied in any other way. And in section 79, the orders for special precautions and the procedure. Special precautions shall be ordered by the head of the institution in case of imminent danger. Other prison officers may also give provisional orders for such precautions. The decision of the head of the institution shall be obtained without delay. Solitary confinement and detention in a specially secured cell on more than 30 days within 12 months shall require the approval of the supervising authority. But there is one exception, solitary as a type of disciplinary action, and what we find there, where other forms of conflict resolution or a warning are deemed insufficient, disciplinary measures may be ordered when prisoners unlawfully and culpably, under 8 then, repeatedly or seriously violate or other obligations imposed on them by or in pursuance of this act, and in doing so disturb orderly community life in the institution. In the subsection 2, the following types of disciplinary action shall be permissible, and then under number 8, disciplinary detention for a period not exceeding 4 weeks. Disciplinary detention shall be imposed only for serious or repeated misconduct. So that's the exception. In the same cell, but it's a bit different to the solitary as a special precaution. So in short words, what's meant by solitary confinement in Germany? It's always a single case examination. There is an escape risk, there is a danger to security and order. Solitary confinement always must be limited in time, and there's an obligation to report to the supervisory authority. And how do we organize this? Because of the small number of prisoners, bigger states provide small security units in certain prisons. Smaller states provide just some solitary confinement cells. Specialized concepts, how to work with the inmates in solitary in all these prisons. And always an individualized step-by-step procedure with the goal to get the inmates out of solitary as soon as possible. And we have strict monitoring by heads of custody in the prisons and the supervising authorities. And how do we design it? First of all, there's specialized staff, additional training for all staff members working with prisoners in solitary confinement, regular supervision for all staff members, regular appointments with psychologists, social workers and psychiatrists for all the inmates in solitary, weekly staff meetings, high communication standards within the staff and with the inmates in solitary, regular records from all team members about each inmate, regular psychiatric reports regarding the status, the risk and the perspective of each inmate, and work and employment opportunities depending on the actual status. The longer he is in there, we always have these step-by-step design. And last but not least, how big is few? To have an idea about the German system, as I told you, we have detention places about 65,000 in Germany, and an actual occupancy of 60,000. We have about 910 solitary cells. That's 1.4%. Half of them are not used, so we have a 50% occupancy, which is about 450 prisoners in all over Germany, 0.7%. More or around 400 of them are in solitary for less than 3 months. It's 0.6%. And longer than 3 months, we have just about 50 all over Germany. That's 0.08%, and some of them are in there because of judicial order. It's a court decision because they are in pre-trial detention, for example, Islamic terrorists, or they refuse psychiatric medication. So our conclusions, last. Yes, we use solitary confinement. We use it based on international regulations and national regulations for a very small number of prisoners with high professionalism and in a close daily human contact, and always in a step-by-step procedure to get them out of solitary. But still there are prisoners in a parts per million range with long stays. Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends and colleagues, thank you very much. A personal comment: in 16 years as a Director General in Mecklenburg-Western Pomerania, I only had 1 or 2 prisoners in solitary for more than 3 months, if at all. Thank you very much for your attention, and bye-bye.